Chapter 264. Su Len moved his wrists and weighed the spear in his hand. The 3-meter-long spear was thrown out with more power than the ballista bolts. Several wyverns that were hit directly fell from the sky. The 3-meter-long spear pierced through their bodies, and even the orc knights on their bodies were pierced. Seeing such terrible injuries, the remaining wyvern knights were so frightened that they quickly flew higher into the sky, not daring to tangle with the harpies. To these wyvern knights, killing a few dozen harpies was not enough to make up for their losses. How many harpies were there and how many wyverns were there? To put it bluntly, the value of a wyvern was several hundred times that of a harpy. The orc army had more than 100,000 in total, but there were no more than 30 wyverns in total. They had already used up the entire tribe's strength to successfully tame them. The amount of resources and energy spent was too much for a large tribe like theirs to bear. The northern wastelands were barren to begin with, and the orcs were not good at farming, so the food production was limited. A Euron like the wyverns needed a bison for every meal. In a month, these 30-odd wyverns needed hundreds of bison. Not to mention the cost of capturing and taming them. Every wyvern was very precious in the orc tribe. Now, 6 or 7 wyverns had died in this battle. Such a heavy loss made Barton not dare to tangle with the harpies anymore. Even in Cult City, they had only suffered 3 casualties after fighting against the human Griffin Knights for half a month. On the other hand, the human Griffin Knights had suffered more than 20 casualties. Originally, Barton did not care too much about the mission of encircling this human army. After all, in their opinion, this human army only dared to launch sneak attacks. As long as they blocked them, it would be easy to deal with them. In the end, the development of the situation surprised them. After being surrounded, the human army did not have the slightest intention of escaping. Instead, they directly killed the wolf riders that were in charge of delaying them. Then, they quickly ate the 2 orc armies, and then went to fight with the remaining 2 armies. Even their wyvern knight squad suffered a great loss. The wyverns retreated from the battle in a panic. Alex coldly glanced at them and did not give chase. The main reason was that these wyverns were very fast, making it very difficult to chase them down. The battle below was still ongoing, so the harpies could not leave the battlefield. Without the wyverns' interference, the harpies once again launched a surprise attack on the orcs. A large number of stones fell from the sky, and the orcs, who lacked protection, were unable to resist at all. The originally struggling front quickly began to collapse. At this time, Su Len activated the lightning domain. There were no legendary-level warriors in the orc army. After all, they thought that it wouldn't be too difficult to wipe out the small army that had been causing trouble at the rear. However, they didn't expect that the 20,000 orcs would be defeated by this small army. What was even more unacceptable was that the commander of this army was actually a legendary powerhouse. They had originally wanted to catch a big fish, but instead, they caught a shark. Not only was the bait eaten, but even the fishermen could not escape. Under the continuous attacks of the barbarian warriors, heavy armored spearmen, spear guards, harpies, and centaur cavalry, the orc army was in a precarious situation. After seeing Su Len activate the lightning domain, it was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. The entire orc army no longer had any intention of holding on, and completely collapsed. Seeing the orc army collapse, the morale of the northern city soldiers was even higher. With the help of the centaur cavalry, they began to chase and kill the orcs. The scattered orc army had no discipline at all. The mountains and plains were filled with orcs running wildly, afraid that they would be killed by the humans behind them if they were too slow. This orc army had completely lost the courage to continue. In the end, even if they managed to escape the pursuit, it would take a long time for them to recover their morale. The soldiers of the northern city were like chasing ducks. They chased the large number of orcs away. Along the way, there were corpses of orcs everywhere. Su Len chased for 20 miles. When he saw that the formation of the army had completely collapsed, he was shocked. He quickly ordered all the troops to gather. The hot-blooded soldiers of the northern city finally came back to their senses. After seeing that the army had completely dispersed, Su Len was also scared. If there was another army ambushing here at this time, With the performance of the Northern City Army, they would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Luckily, the Orc army did not leave an ambush here. However, this also reminded Su Len that he could not be complacent at any time. Otherwise, he would end up like Cao Cao. Haha, I laughed at Zhou Yu's lack of strategy. Zhuge Shaoji. What if I ambush another army? What will happen? That famous scene suddenly appeared in Sullen's mind. He shook his head and swept the scene of why the Prime Minister was laughing out of his mind. Su Len then ordered the army to clean up the battlefield. Although the orcs did not bring any supplies, they still had a lot of weapons and armor. Although these weapons were not as good as the ones in the northern city, they were still pretty good after being reforged. At least these weapons had been refined. Other than leaving a few people to clean up the battlefield, Su Len once again led his men to attack the orc camp where the human slaves were imprisoned. Half of the orc army in this camp had been mobilized. Now that Sullen's attack was unstoppable, it did not take him much effort to conquer the camp. Seeing this situation, Su Len decided to go all out. He directly led his men to attack the other camps where the human slaves were imprisoned. In order to deal with Su Len, the orcs had mobilized half of their army in the rear camp. Only the ones guarding the food were not mobilized. Now the orc army was wiped out by Su Len. There was no longer an army that could pose a threat to him. Even if Su Luen swaggered past the orcs' camp with his human slaves, the orcs just held their camp without the slightest intention of attacking. Su Len ordered his subordinates to gather the prisoners while he checked his harvest. The battle is over. Congratulations, host. You have won an epic victory. The Battle of Encirclement and Counter-Encirclement. July 1687 of the Huiwe calendar. The northern orcs invaded the south. The Blackstone stronghold was breached in a week, and the northern provinces fell. You led the army of the northern city to conduct guerrilla warfare behind the orcs in the northern provinces. You successfully attacked the orc camps multiple times and caused a large number of casualties. The orcs mobilized more than 20,000 orcs, including wolf riders and wyvern riders, to ambush you and your army from all sides. At this critical moment, you led your army to eliminate more than 3,000 wolf riders, then broke through the orc army that surrounded the two sides. Finally, you engaged in a decisive battle with the remaining orcs. In the end, you and your army achieved a glorious victory. Your battle dealt a huge blow to the orcs. As the battle was over, the reputation of you and your army began to spread. You have gained a huge reputation in the Kingdom of Florence. Reputation plus 25. You have defeated the orcs and saved a large number of human slaves. You have gained plus 10 favorability with the nobles in the northern provinces. Your reputation has begun to spread among the nobles. Your charm has increased by 2, so you can easily gain the favor of the nobles. You have defeated the orc army. You have gained 33,560 experience points. You have gained 1 platinum treasure chest and 2 gold treasure chests. The battle is over. You have gained the item recruitment token X2. Su Len rubbed his hands excitedly. He had gained 1 platinum treasure chest and 2 gold treasure chests from this battle. There were even 2 recruitment tokens. The value was not small. First, he went to find some clean water to wash himself seriously, then asked someone to prepare a quiet room. After meditating in the quiet room for a while, Su Len ritualistically opened the storage space. After thinking for a while, he opened the 2 gold treasure chests. There was a flash of light, and the familiar sound of the system rang in his ears. Congratulations, host. You have opened the gold treasure chest. You have gained the skill Greater Group Haste. Increase army speed. Congratulations, host. You have opened the gold treasure chest. You have gained the Tiger Tally. Shooting Sound Camp. Seeing the item in the gold treasure chest, Sullen's eyes lit up. Greater Group Haste. A skill created by the system to increase army speed, combined with the rules of this world. After use, it can buff the soldiers under your command with the Greater Group Haste. The spell range is 1,000 people. For every additional 100 people, the energy consumption will increase by 20%. Spell effect. Movement speed will increase by 100%. Duration 1 hour. The effect of the greater group haste was very powerful. It directly doubled the speed of the soldiers. If all the soldiers were buffed with this skill, the movement ability of the Northern Battlefront City Army would be insane. No matter if it was used to attack or retreat, they could completely take the initiative. They could fight if they wanted to and run if they did not want to. The only problem was that the energy consumption was a little high. Su Len played with the tiger tally in his hand. He already had a tiger tally like this. It was the formation breaker. There were 700 formation breakers. It could allow the spear guard to advance to a higher level of formation breaker. This tiger tally of the shooting sound camp had the same effect. Commander tally, shooting sound camp. After use, it can train a special elite soldier type, the shooting sound camp. They can shoot arrows from 100 paces away, rain arrows from the sky, and shoot arrows from the feather forest. They will follow you in life and death. Recruitment: 500 people. Recruitment requirements: sharpshooter. Recruitment requires 100 units of food. Kinner: 200 units. Training success rate: 20%. After seeing the recruitment requirements of the shooting sound camp, Su Len already knew that this was the advancement of the archers. Originally, when an archer advanced to become a sharpshooter, they would reach the peak. If they could not break through to become a hero, then their potential would be exhausted and they would not be able to advance for the rest of their lives. However, with this shooting sound camp's commander tally, those soldiers who reached the level of a sharpshooter could advance again as long as they passed the test. Chapter 265. In the Feather Forest Archery Battalion, the sharpshooters who had advanced would have 3 skills: Rain of Arrows, increased shooting speed, and Sharpshooter. Rain of Arrows allowed these sharpshooters to shoot multiple arrows at once without affecting accuracy. Increased shooting speed was an increase in attack speed. As for Sharpshooter, it increased the arrow's attack power, armor-piercing effect, accuracy, and range. To put it bluntly, it was like an ancient sniper. However, Sharpshooter consumed a lot of energy and needed time to recover every time it was used. However, the power was very good. Su Len estimated that if he encountered those wyverns again, the archers of the Advanced Archery Battalion would be able to kill them with Sharpshooter. After seeing the tiger tally of the Archery Battalion, Su Len couldn't help but want to train a few of them. However, compared to the Formation Breaker, the Archery Battalion was more difficult to recruit. The archers had more experience than the spearmen, so it was much slower for the archers to advance compared to the spearmen. Su Len originally wanted to let the gnomes become full-time archers, but the results showed that the conditions didn't meet the requirements. This made Su Len give up on the idea. There weren't many archers in the Northern Citadel who had reached the level of archer. There were only 3 of them. 2 of them were the war spirits he had recruited before. 3 archers, the chance of advancing was only 1 in 5. If they were unlucky, none of them would advance. Although the gnomes couldn't become full-time archers, the gnomes' phantom magic archers weren't any weaker than the archery battalion. However, if they wanted to advance, the long experience bar would make them despair. Su Len put away the tiger tally of the archery battalion. He planned to set up a training camp when he returned and train the soldiers of the archery battalion. After putting away the things, Su Len rubbed his hands and opened the remaining platinum treasure chest. A beautiful special effect flashed and a system prompt sounded in his ears. Congratulations, host. You have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have received a skill point pack. Skill point pack? What was this? Su Len looked at the flashing purple brocade bag in front of him. This brocade bag looked very exquisite. There were beautiful patterns embroidered with gold thread. One look and he knew that it was expensive. Skill point pack. After opening, you can receive 5 normal skill points and 1 legendary skill point. Legendary skill point. Sullen's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. He had used the legendary skill point before. Part of the credit for his lightning domain was due to the legendary skill point. It was also because of the fusion of the legendary skill point that Su Len had successfully fused the Thunder Lightning Spear, Floating Lightning Array, and Lightning Control into the lightning domain. He had only obtained the legendary skill point when he had advanced to legendary. He had never thought that he would get one from a platinum treasure chest this time. Grabbing the purple pouch, Su Len chose to open it. With a flash of light, 5 skill points and 1 legendary skill point appeared on Sullen's system interface. What disappointed Sulen was that this legendary skill point could not upgrade the lightning territory. However, this legendary skill point was not without other effects. A plus symbol appeared above the other skills in his hand. He clicked on it and it showed whether he wanted to upgrade the skill with the legendary skill point. Sulen did not agree. Instead, he looked at the effects of the upgraded skills. The skills that made Sulen most envious were mechanical control, forbidden magic, and dodge instinct. After the upgrade, mechanical control became magic technology. He had mastered the prerequisite technology to build a floating city. With this skill, he could study the floating city technology and build it. However, he still lacked the experience of magic technology and could not upgrade it. As for the forbidden magic skill, it was even more exciting. In the past, the forbidden magic skill could only be used on people who were weaker than him, and the forbidden magic effect could only be used on enemies below the legendary rank. After the forbidden magic skill was upgraded, it could be used on legendary enemies. However, the effect and duration of the forbidden magic skill varied greatly with the enemy. If it was a wizard who had not mastered a domain, then the forbidden magic skill would last longer. If it was a wizard who had mastered a domain, then the forbidden magic skill would increase the difficulty of the opponent's casting. In fact, even the goddess of magic, Mistra, could not fully master the forbidden magic skill. Otherwise, the arcane kingdom would not dare to challenge the gods. Even so, the forbidden magic skill was very powerful. It was just that when Sulen chose to upgrade it, the system notified him that he did not have enough skill points. To upgrade the forbidden magic skill, he needed 2 legendary skill points. The last passive ability was Dodge Instinct. Sulen spent a lot of time in the training ground to master Dodge Instinct. If he wanted to get a stronger sixth sense, it was no longer a matter of training. In fact, there was no training to master the sixth sense. One way to get the sixth sense was to be born with it. There were very few people who could get it. If they did not die prematurely, they could become a strong person. The sixth sense was also known as one of the most powerful legendary abilities. Another way was for a thief with Dodge Instinct to see the goddess of luck's underwear when he advanced to the legendary rank. If he was lucky enough, his Dodge Instinct would be upgraded to the sixth sense. However, there were very few people who could do this. Another way was for a monk. These monks with mysterious power, after advancing to the legendary monk, their perception was further strengthened and there was a certain chance of awakening the sixth sense ability. There were also legendary adventures or entering the realm of the gods. All gods had the sixth sense ability. As for the more advanced super sixth sense, this was a legendary ability. Those who mastered this ability could be said to be the simplified version of the child of the plane. Upgrading Dodge Instinct required 1 legendary skill point. Sulen hesitated for a moment and then directly chose to upgrade it. A golden light instantly merged into Sullen's body. His perception was magnified several times in an instant, and the surrounding environment appeared in his mind. After a long time, this feeling gradually disappeared. When he opened his eyes, his perception of the surroundings was obviously different. Even if he did not use his eyes to see, he knew the surrounding environment. During the battle, he could even sense the direction of the opponent's attack in advance. This skill was very obvious in increasing his combat power. The Dodge Instinct ability in the system interface also became Sixth Sense. In addition to the legendary skill point, Sulen also had 5 ordinary skill points. The greater group haste that he had just opened from the treasure chest required 3 skill points to learn. Sulen directly chose to learn it. The remaining 2 skill points did not have any skills to learn for the time being, so he kept them for later use. After opening the treasure chest, there were still 2 recruitment tokens. Sulen did not use them for the time being. Now that he had recruited enough human slaves, he would use them when this batch was transported back to the northern town. Because the orc army had been defeated this time, there were not enough soldiers to defend the orc camp. Sulen took back all the human slaves from the orc camp. Now the entire Blackstone fortress was filled with a large population. Just Sulen alone had taken over 30,000 people from the orcs. In addition to the refugees that had fled to the surrounding wilderness, the population of the Blackstone Fortress had reached 40,000. With so many people gathered in the Blackstone Fortress, it was not safe. Although Sulen had defeated the 20,000 orc army, it had also attracted the attention of the orcs. One had to know that there was an even more powerful 80,000 orc army in Cult City. If the 80,000 orc army suddenly turned around and attacked him, no matter how powerful the Northern Town's army was, they would have no choice but to retreat. Therefore, Sulen had to move these people to the Northern Town city as soon as possible. Only when these people left would the Northern Town's army have nothing to worry about. Otherwise, they would be stuck here forever. In order to move the people, Sulen's army pulled back and no longer attacked the orc camp. Instead, they seized the time to move the people. This time, all the soldiers were assigned to escort the people. All the people were divided into groups of 100, and 1,000 people were moved at once. The 40,000 people were divided into 40 groups and set off from the Blackstone Fortress. The entire Northern Town's army was mobilized. Tens of thousands of people were boundless, let alone 40,000. The journey from the Blackstone Fortress to the Northern Town city was filled with migrating groups. Fortunately, the Northern Town soldiers were experienced in migrating. Although there were a lot of people this time, there was not much chaos. Sulen had already sent someone to the Northern Town city to inform them of the migration. Even the Northern Town city could not handle the influx of 40,000 people. Therefore, they were told to prepare in advance. Food, clothing, housing, sanitation, and so on were all big problems. There were no empty houses in the Northern Town city. After the refugees and slaves arrived, they had no choice but to build a large number of camps and live in them for the time being. At the same time, they had to pay attention to the spread of infectious diseases. Sulen was too lazy to comment on the medical conditions of this era. In Sulen's eyes, the doctor's treatment methods were a complete gamble. The medical standards of this era were not very advanced. Of course, it did not mean that there was no way to treat a sick person. As long as they donated some money to the temple, a priest would cast a divine spell on them. The divine spells that could cure diseases were very effective, but the price was too high. Ordinary people would have to save up for a few months to afford them. Of course, to show the mercy of the gods and spread their faith, the priests would charge a lot less. The temple would also take out a day every month to treat the poor who did not have money. Of course, the number of people they could treat was limited. As for why did the temple need so much money? Did the gods need money? It was not like there was no such thing. However, the temple claimed that the money was needed for the construction of the temple and the operation of the temple. After all, the food that the temple gave out every month was bought with money. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. Chapter 266. There were no temples in the Northern Citadel. At least, none of the temples had noticed this place yet. Without a temple, there were no priests. Fortunately, the buildings in the Northern Citadel had health attributes, so the humans living here rarely fell sick. Even if they did, they could still survive. However, the refugees and slaves who had just migrated here could not do so. They had experienced the Orc War and had to hide in the wilderness or work in the camps. Their bodies were not in good condition. Even after a few days of recuperation in the Blackstone Fortress, they still could not recover their health. Then there was the long journey to the Northern Citadel. Many of them fell sick. Chris was caught off guard by this situation. After all, she was a succubus, not a doctor. Fortunately, Hathaway was also here. As a wizard and an alchemist, she knew how to concoct potions. She immediately began to concoct potions when she discovered that the migrants were sick. It was not difficult to concoct potions to treat common diseases. The only problem was that they were in high demand. In order to cure these people as soon as possible, Hathaway recruited a group of alchemists and had them concoct potions according to the steps she taught them. Being chosen by Hathaway to become a pharmacist was simply a joyous occasion for those refugees. The spread of knowledge in this world was very slow. Ordinary people would have to pay a very high price to learn knowledge. Most of the time, children would inherit their father's work. Therefore, in this world, there were many fathers who were blacksmiths, sons who were blacksmiths, and even grandchildren or grandchildren's sons were blacksmiths. The nobles were also happy to see this. This way, there were very few people who could cross the social class gap. They could always be nobles. These lucky people who were chosen by Hathaway were given the opportunity to cross the social class gap. Therefore, they were all eager to absorb the knowledge taught by Hathaway. Hathaway had only taught him some basic formulas to treat some common diseases. But even for such common diseases, if the body wasn't strong enough, there was a high chance that the disease would slowly become serious and eventually die of illness. Hathaway did not brew a lot of potions, but the effect was very good. With the help of these herbalists, and the fact that Northern Town City had always paid attention to personal hygiene, the diseases did not break out at all. They only spread in a small area and were soon under control. Su Luan had a professional regulation for the acceptance of refugees. After arriving at the northern town, all the refugees had to take a bath, clean up their personal hygiene, and then distribute clean clothes. They also needed to be isolated in a temporary camp for a period of time. The harsh environmental conditions of this era forced Su Len to do this. After finally confirming that there were no problems, these people were assigned to various work groups. With the help of the pharmacists and the artificial quarantine, the condition of the refugees and slaves was soon under control. The northern town city was not affected at all. Together with the 40,000 people that had migrated here, the population of the northern town city had finally exceeded 100,000. However, Northern Citadel couldn't accommodate so many people. Chrissy had built a dozen or so temporary settlements near Northern Citadel for the refugees and slaves from the Blackstone Fort to live in. At the same time, Northern Town City had also started the third phase of construction. The first thing to be built was housing. Northern Town City had trained a group of excellent construction workers through a large number of infrastructure projects. These workers started building according to Sullen's blueprints. The entire northern town city had become a huge construction site. In addition to the construction, the farmland in northern town city also continued to expand. Because there was enough manpower, the amount of farmland reclaimed was at least 100,000 mu, which was double the original amount of farmland. Out of the original 50,000 mu of farmland, only a part of it was planted with food. This amount of food was still enough for northern town city, but with the arrival of a large number of people, if Northern Town City did not expand the farmland, there would be a shortage of food. The arrival of the equivalent population brought a series of problems to Northern Town City. The most obvious one was that the number of grassroots officials was once again insufficient. It could be said that the entire Northern Town City was now overloaded. Just as Sullen's migration was in full swing, the orc chieftain Rogthus in Cult City also received the news of his defeat. Bang! A loud noise was heard. Rogthus slammed the table in front of him into pieces. He was still angry. A 20,000 orc army was defeated by a mere 5,000 humans? I'm sorry, chieftain. 3,000 wolf knights were also killed. The messenger was sweating profusely as he said nervously, 20,000 orc army. Even if 20,000 swine beasts were lined up for you to kill, how long would it take? 20,000 orc army was completely annihilated. We have been besieging Cult City all this time, but we have never suffered such a heavy loss. Rogthus roared in anger. Chieftain, it's not that we are useless. Those humans are just too cunning. The orc general kneeling on the ground said dejectedly, It's not that I didn't give you a chance. In fact, I gave you 2 chances. But what did you give me? A 20,000 orc army completely annihilated? Rogthus said with a cold expression. Men, drag this coward out. Chop off his head and use it as a sacrifice to our fallen comrades. Rogthus's authority was fully displayed at this moment. A few tall and strong orcs came in and walked up to the general. Ignoring the orc general's expression, they dragged him out of the tent. Then, a scream came to an abrupt end. Soon, a bloody orc head was brought in. Chop it up and feed it to the dogs, Rogthus said coldly. Soon, the orc general's head was brought out. Rogthus looked around the tent and said slowly, The loss of 20,000 orc army has put our rear camp in a precarious situation. Once they break through the camp where we store our food, the consequences will be unimaginable. So, we need to get rid of this human army as soon as possible. Chieftain, our main forces are fighting in Cult City. The number of soldiers left is limited. Send 10,000 elites from the front line. Chieftain, I'm not sure if you've noticed the special characteristics of this human army, the old great shaman suddenly said. Great shaman, what special characteristics do they have? Rogthus asked curiously. The other orc generals also looked over. Cough, cough. Did you notice? Although this human army is attacking our rear camp, the camps they're attacking and occupying are the ones where we keep our human slaves. The great shaman said slowly. Yes, that's right. After the great shaman's reminder, Rogthus also realized what was going on. Why do they only attack the camps with humans? The great shaman continued to ask. Without waiting for the other orcs to answer, he continued. There's only one answer. This human army is here for the human slaves we've captured. Human slaves? Rogthus's face was filled with shock. Yes, human slaves, the great shaman said with certainty. Look, there were a few times when they could have broken through the camps where we store our food, but they didn't. Also, although the logistics teams were also robbed, they left as soon as they came in. They didn't stop at all. These people are looking for the camps where the humans are kept. Why are they doing this? Rogthus was puzzled. Was rescuing the humans worse than cutting off the food supply of the orc army to help the humans win? That's the problem. There's only one reason these humans are doing this. There's a problem within the human kingdom, the great shaman said with a wise face. It was as if he had already seen through everything. You're saying that there's a conflict within the human kingdom? Rogthus's eyes lit up. If there really was a conflict within the human kingdom, it would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. Sulen didn't know that his actions of rescuing the refugees had caused the orcs to be on high alert. These orcs were also imagining things on their own. He was still recruiting refugees in the Blackstone Fortress. Other than him, there were other nobles who were also recruiting refugees. These nobles were completely forced by Sulen. If they didn't recruit refugees, all the refugees would be taken away by Sulen. At that time, even if they successfully drove the orcs away, they wouldn't be able to rebuild their territory without the refugees. Although the northern wilderness had experienced a war, the casualties weren't too serious. Other than the original cities in the northern provinces, there were also many villages scattered around the cities. These villages didn't have tall walls to protect them, so they were easily breached by the orcs. After a round of robbery, a large number of humans escaped into the wilderness. In order to recruit more refugees, Sulen took out the 2 recruitment tokens he had obtained from the previous battle. He played with the tokens for a while and chose to use them. The host has used the recruitment token. The effect of the recruitment token has been activated. Sulen's attraction to the refugees in the surrounding wilderness has greatly increased. After using the recruitment token, Sulen didn't stay idle. He began to prepare the soldiers. The recruitment token was very effective. In just half an hour, Sulen received a report from a guard. Sir, there's a large number of refugees coming. They want to join our northern town city, a guard said excitedly. How many people? Sulen asked. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't count, but there are at least 1,000 people. 1,000 people? The recruitment effect is so good this time? Sulen was a little surprised. The recruitment tokens he had used before weren't as effective. Chapter 267. In the past, Sulen could only recruit 100 or 200 people with his recruitment order. His best result was when he managed to recruit 400 to 500 half-elves. Now, he was able to recruit more than 1,000 people with this recruitment order. It was unbelievable. The last time he used the recruitment order, he defeated the trolls. This time, he defeated the orcs. There didn't seem to be much of a connection between the two. Sulen was puzzled. He was curious about the hidden effect of the recruitment order. Su Luan opened the system log and browsed through it casually. Since the first time he used the recruitment order, except for one time when he directly recruited a hero, the number of people he recruited increased each time. His attributes didn't have such an effect. Could it really be a hidden buff for victory? Sulen wondered. Ding! A large group of refugees have heard that you have defeated the beastmen. They admire your prestige and wish to join your territory. Do you agree? At this moment, the system's voice suddenly rang out. I agree, Su Luan confirmed. At this time, he seemed to suddenly understand something. Admire my prestige? Oh right, prestige. Su Len immediately reacted. So the recruitment order is effective when I have high prestige. When he defeated the trolls, his prestige had increased by 15, and he had recruited more than 500 people. Now that he had increased it by 25, he had recruited nearly 1,000 people. After figuring out the effect of the recruitment order, Su Len used the other recruitment order. Soon, Su Len heard a guard report that 1,000 refugees wanted to join the northern city. After seeing this effect, Su Len finally understood the effect of prestige. The orcs had no choice but to withdraw some of their troops. This way, the pressure on Kalent City was greatly reduced. During this period of time, the orcs' continuous attacks had caused great losses to Kalent City. Of course, the orcs' losses were more than the humans. At this time, the kingdom's army finally arrived near Kalent City. The Pillar of the Empire, legendary knight Went, had arrived 2 days earlier than scheduled. Marquis Airy of Kalent City heaved a sigh of relief. However, something surprising happened. The orc army didn't retreat after Marquis Winter arrived. Instead, they turned around and approached Marquis Winter's army of 100,000. On the walls of Kalent, Airy, Wayne, Gavin, and some other noble generals were shocked to see the orcs' actions. Are these beast men crazy? Although they are indeed very powerful, those are the elites of the kingdom, and there are at least 100,000 of them. Marquis Airy muttered to himself as he looked at the battle that was about to erupt outside the city. Something's not right. The situation isn't looking good. Have you guys noticed that the intensity of the orcs' attacks has decreased over the past 2 days? Wayne suddenly said. That's right. The orcs haven't reached the city walls in the past 2 days. The others suddenly reacted. Oh no, the orcs are doing this on purpose. They've been conserving their strength for the past 2 days and waiting for the human army to arrive. One of the generals said with a pale face. In order for the kingdom to speed up the dispatch, we have been saying that the situation is dangerous. That's why the army led by Marquis Winter is actually a tired army. After hearing the general's explanation, these people immediately reacted. After all, they lived in the northern provinces and often had to fight. The nobles weren't as rotten as the nobles in the south. They had been on the battlefield and had all kinds of battle knowledge. Now that they were reminded, they completely understood the orcs' wishful thinking. They had made up their minds to launch a decisive battle while the human reinforcements were still unsettled. After seeing the approaching orc army, Marquis Winter also realized that he had made a fatal mistake in order to rescue his people. At this moment, a group of tall figures walked out of the orc camp. Seeing these figures, both the soldiers of Kalent and the soldiers of Marquis Winter couldn't help but gasp. Mammoths! They're mammoths! 200 tall mammoths ran out from the orc camp. These mammoths were 5 meters tall, and their bodies were covered with a thick layer of fur. Their thick and sturdy legs were like pillars, and their fierce and sharp tusks were 3 meters long. These mammoths were powerful beasts that lived in the northern wastelands. Each mammoth weighed at least 20 tons. They were also one of the few beasts that could go head-to-head with a land dragon. There were 3 beastmen riding on each mammoth. One beastman held a long machete, one beastman held a long spear, and the last shaman was in charge of beating war drums to control the mammoths. The appearance of more than 200 mammoths immediately caused a commotion. Many soldiers even turned pale with fright. These prehistoric beasts were too oppressive. Although there were only 200 mammoths, the vibrations they created when they walked were greater than the movements of thousands of heavy armored knights. These mammoths were also equipped with simple armor, and there were also some sharp weapons tied to their bodies. The war drums sounded, and the mammoths began to charge. The human reinforcements, who had yet to recover from their rapid march, felt their limbs turn cold when they saw the orc mammoths charging at them. Their bodies went soft, and their faces turned pale. The mammoths roared. The entire battlefield could hear the tyrannical aura in their roars. In the face of a 5 to 6 meter tall behemoth that weighed dozens of tons, charging at you like a heavy tank, it was as if you were facing a huge tank. What would you do? Stay where you were and be trampled to death, or run far away? Under the control of the orc shamans, the 200 mammoths charged into the vanguard of the human reinforcements. Then, an extremely tragic scene appeared before everyone's eyes. The vanguard of the human reinforcements was instantly torn apart by the mammoths. Then, these behemoths began to slaughter. The long trunks of the mammoths directly rolled up a heavily armored soldier and threw him more than 10 meters away. He then heavily smashed into the ground. The heavy elephant legs stomped down, and several soldiers who couldn't dodge in time were trampled into meat patties. The terrifying tusks of the mammoths lightly jumped and pierced through several humans along with their armor. Countless human soldiers were easily knocked away and trampled by the mammoths as if they were being crushed by boulders. The impact of the mammoths caused the human front line to tumble like waves. These gigantic beasts with thick skin and armor could not be dealt with by conventional means. Even powerful knights would not be able to withstand more than 2 hits from these gigantic beasts. As long as they were lightly bumped or trampled, even if they were wearing heavy armor, they would probably die on the spot. In just a few minutes, the vanguard of the 10,000-strong army began to collapse. The human soldiers didn't dare to continue resisting. If they didn't stop them, the entire army would be crushed by these mammoths. For the kingdom, charge! Just as the morale of the army was shaken and about to collapse, the pillar of the kingdom, Knight Winter, roared loudly. A powerful knight burst out from his body. All the knights felt a surge of power from the bottom of their hearts, and their originally panicked expressions disappeared. Halo of Courage. This was an ability that this legendary knight had mastered. It could fill the surrounding soldiers with courage and fearlessness, and strengthen their will to fight. Under the effect of the Halo of Courage, the already precarious front line was once again stabilized. Under the leadership of Winter, the strongest thorned knights of the kingdom spurred their warhorses and charged towards the mammoths. They were like the tragic scene in the Lord of the Rings trilogy where the human cavalrymen charged towards the mammoths with indomitable will. 3,000 knights were like a flood of steel, breaking through the dam and charging towards the mammoths. The two forces of absolute power were at the peak of the battle. The people in the middle of the battlefield had already dodged the path of the two armies' charge. As for those who couldn't dodge in time, they were already dead under the feet of the mammoths. The distance of 1,000 meters was covered in the blink of an eye. The strongest knights of the human kingdom and the strongest army of the orcs had their first clash. Ice Storm. On top of the mammoths, the shaman riding the mammoths suddenly roared. The war drums roared and a powerful energy appeared on the battlefield. Ice appeared and began to spin rapidly. A dozen ice storms appeared in front of the charging knights and directly froze the human knights into ice sculptures. Even the warhorses were torn apart by the ice blades. The charging warhorses fell down, and the knights behind them who couldn't dodge in time fell down as well. The moment the knights fell to the ground, their necks or legs were broken. They were then trampled to death by the warhorses behind them. However, this didn't stop the knights from charging. The leading knight, Winter, roared. The lance in his hand carried a powerful force and instantly pierced through the mammoths that were charging towards him. The lance directly pierced through the mammoths' heads and then into its huge body. Suffering such a heavy blow, the mammoths let out a mournful cry, staggered, and then fell down with a loud bang. However, there weren't many experts in the Knight Corps who could kill the mammoths as easily as he did. Most of the knights could only cause some minor injuries to the mammoths before they were swept away, knocked away, or trampled into a pile of mud by the mammoths. In the knights, some of the commanders also began to roar. The lance in their hands was directly thrown out. The powerful force made the lance pierce through the mammoths' bodies. The huge pain made these behemoths couldn't help but roar. More knights took the opportunity to stab more lances into the mammoths. After continuous heavy injuries, the mammoths finally couldn't hold on and fell to the ground with a loud bang. Chain lightning! A bolt of lightning burst out. A powerful electric current jumped between the knights. A dozen knights were electrocuted and trembled all over. Then they were trampled into meat paste by the mammoths. Chapter 268. War Trample. The strongest mammoth raised its head and roared. Its voice resounded throughout the battlefield. It raised its two thick front legs and stomped down heavily. Boom! A muffled sound, like a muffled thunder in the winter, was low but shocking. The hard ground was cracked by the war mammoth, and a yellow light spread out from the war mammoth's body. The surrounding human knights only felt the ground shake, and the war horses panicked. For a moment, the charging formation was disrupted, and some war horses even lost their footing and fell. More than 200 war mammoths used war trample at the same time. It was as if an earthquake had occurred on the battlefield. The human knights who were in the middle of their charge were interrupted. Bursting fireball. Orange-red fireballs flew out from the human front line and smashed into the mammoths. The fireballs exploded, and a scorching heat wave spread out. The mammoths that were hit by the fireballs cried out in pain. The flames continued to burn their bodies, and the intense pain made these mammoths very crazy. They charged left and right and directly threw off a few orcs on their backs. Under the burning flames, the mammoths became even crazier. They even collided with another mammoth next to them. The two mammoths collapsed. The battle became more and more tragic. The human knights suffered heavy casualties. The mammoths were huge creatures with thick skin and thick flesh. They were also wearing simple iron armor. Their impact was unparalleled. These mammoths had thick skin and thick flesh. Ordinary soldiers wouldn't be able to cut through them even if they were armed with sharp weapons. Only a knight-level expert could pierce through the mammoth's defense with the help of the horse's impact. Even so, they could only penetrate a few inches into the mammoth's skin. This kind of injury wasn't fatal to the mammoths. Moreover, the mammoths had been fed many kinds of magic potions by the orc shamans. Their vitality was very strong. The mammoth's powerful trunk swept out, sending a knight flying for over 10 meters. There was an obvious dent in his chest armor made of fine iron, and blood gushed out from his mouth. There were even pieces of his internal organs mixed in the blood. It was obvious that he would not be able to survive. The sharp tusks of the mammoth were even more ferocious and terrifying. Any warhorse that was struck by the tusks of the mammoth would have its stomach ripped open. The body of the warhorse would also be sent flying. Even the plate armor of the knights would be easily torn apart by the mammoth's sharp tusks. Apart from that, the mammoth's most powerful weapon was its stomp. With a weight of more than 10 tons, both the rider and the horse would be trampled into meat paste. The spearmen and swordsmen on the mammoths weren't to be trifled with. They were usually the bravest warriors in the tribe. Their average strength was at the knight rank. Some of them were even at the level of a grand knight. The long weapons in the hands of these orc warriors were long. Although the speed of their swings was a bit slow, they were unstoppable. When they chopped down, many of the charging knights were cut in half by these orc warriors using these long weapons along with their armor. The human archers kept shooting at these mammoths. Wave after wave of arrows rained down. However, the damage caused by these arrows was almost negligible to the mammoths. When the arrows pierced their skin, it looked more like the mammoth's long hair. After seeing the limited effect of attacking the mammoths, many knights began to aim at the orc warriors on the mammoths. Although these orc warriors weren't weak, they didn't have the thick skin of the mammoths. Their armor couldn't withstand the powerful attacks of the knights. For a time, the casualties of the orc riders began to increase. The battle had reached its climax. The orc army relied on the charge of the mammoths to tear apart the human army's defensive line. Behind the mammoths, a large number of orc soldiers followed closely. The human knights stubbornly blocked at the front, but the two flanks were gradually unable to resist. Originally, the human reinforcements had traveled a long distance. After arriving at the battlefield, they didn't even rest and directly entered the battle. This was a cruel test of the soldiers' physical strength. In the face of the orcs' charge, the human army's counterattack was powerless. The two flanks of the human army were defeated by the orcs' attack. Seeing this, the nobles of Cult City couldn't sit still. If the reinforcements outside the city were defeated by the orcs, Cult City wouldn't be able to hold on. The only reason Cult City didn't collapse was because they knew the kingdom's reinforcements were about to arrive. If the reinforcements failed and retreated, Cult City would lose foreign aid. Without reinforcements, the morale of Cult City would collapse. When the orc army besieged the city, Cult City would most likely fall. Seeing this, Marquis Airy quickly made a decision. He took the initiative to attack. As the strongest lord of the northern provinces, Cult City's strength was still very strong. It didn't take long for more than 2,000 knights to gather in Cult City, including Gavin's knights. This was the strongest mobile force in Cult City. The tightly shut city gates opened with a loud bang. Then, 2,000 knights formed a steel torrent and rushed in like a flood breaking through a dam. The knights purposely took an arc and rushed in from the side of the battlefield. The orc army didn't even have time to adjust before they were torn apart by the human knights. The unstoppable orc army's attack was stopped in an instant. Damn it! Seeing the sudden appearance of the human knights, Rogue thus was enraged. Originally, there were more than 80,000 orcs on the battlefield. They died in the siege. Because of Sullen's attack from the rear, more than 10,000 orcs were mobilized. Now, there were only 60,000 orcs left. Facing the human army of 100,000 orcs, except for the soldiers guarding Cult City, the rest were all on the battlefield. Cult City didn't send out any infantry. Instead, they sent out a group of knights. The orcs' victory was once again tipped back to balance. An old orc riding a wild bull appeared on the battlefield. The old shaman looked wobbly as if a gust of wind could blow him away. However, as soon as he appeared, a strange energy began to gather. Powerful elemental energy quickly gathered. A few flashes of light flashed on the old orc's body. A yellowish energy barrier appeared on the surface of his body. The wind blew fiercely, and a dark cloud suddenly appeared in the originally clear sky. The dark cloud seemed to have a life of its own as it kept spinning. A large amount of lightning flashed in the dark cloud vortex, and a large amount of lightning swam in the air. Under the cover of the dark cloud, it was like the end of the world. Not good. Went's expression changed drastically. However, before he could react, bolts of lightning suddenly fell from the dark cloud. Thunderbolt! Lightning flashed, lighting up the entire battlefield. Hundreds of lightning bolts struck down, and the human knights below the dark clouds were instantly hit. Lightning flashed, and a large amount of lightning jumped on these knights. The powerful lightning power slightly melted the armor on their bodies. This space turned into a thunder prison in an instant. The space was completely filled with thunder and lightning. 200 to 300 knights were directly submerged in this thunder prison. They were blasted into charcoal by the power of thunder and lightning in the sky before they could even let out a scream. Many craters were formed on the ground. Countless bolts of lightning were like thunder snakes, spreading to the surroundings at an extremely fast speed. The metal armor of the humans was the best conductor of lightning. The power of lightning flashed quickly on the bodies of these soldiers. These soldiers were electrocuted until their bodies convulsed. A burnt smell appeared on the battlefield. A large number of soldiers directly fell to the ground, losing all signs of life. This spell was like the might of the heavens. The entire battlefield was speechless at this moment. Even legendary knights couldn't do this. Only spellcasters could release such amazing power. This was also one of the reasons why wizards could achieve such a high status. Seeing the scene on the battlefield, Went's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He roared, and his aura continued to rise. The long spear in his hand danced quickly. A mammoth's head was directly pierced, and its huge body fell to the ground. Went didn't hesitate at all. He led a team of knights and himself turned into an arrowhead. They formed a conical formation and rushed towards the shaman. The legendary knight was unstoppable. Whether it was orcs, mammoths, or orc warriors, none of them were a match for him. Everywhere he went, there were corpses. At this time, a strong orc also led people to meet him. The orc was holding a giant axe. He roared, and a violent aura spread out from his body. It was the chief of the orcs, Rogthus. The two legendary powerhouses noticed each other in an instant. Both of them didn't intend to dodge. Instead, they sped up and rushed towards each other. Like a comet colliding, a loud noise sounded on the battlefield. A violent energy escaped from the two of them and directly pushed away all the people and objects within a radius of 10 meters. No matter if it was an orc or a human, they all consciously avoided this place. Under the full power of the two legendary powerhouses, even a little bit of leaked energy would cause serious injuries. In serious cases, they would even lose their lives. As a legendary knight of Florence, whence strength was naturally tyrannical, Rogthus wasn't weak either. It would take a long time for the two of them to decide the winner. Seeing that Went was entangled, the old orc prepared to cast another spell. Bursting Flame, Ice Storm, Thunderstorm. Spells were cast one after another. Although it wasn't as powerful as the previous spell, its power wasn't weak at all. At the same time, the human wizards around were also casting spells quickly. Chain Fireball, Chain Lightning, Wild Wind Blade Dance. A large number of spells swept across the battlefield. A fireball exploded in the formation of the orcs. Even if they had scattered in advance to avoid it, more than a dozen of them still fell to the ground. Most of them were dead, and the rest wouldn't live for long. In such a fierce battlefield, there wasn't much difference between being seriously injured and dying. Chapter 269. While the battle was going on in Cult City, Sulen had already left Blackstone Fortress with his army. He didn't plan to be the main force in this battle, but he could still get some benefits from it. In a battle of this scale, a few thousand people from northern Battlefront City wouldn't even be able to cause a few ripples. Therefore, he had to be careful. On the battlefield of 200,000 people, the flames of war spread for more than 10 kilometers. Su Luan did not get too close to the battlefield. At this time, all kinds of elemental energy were constantly released on the battlefield, which made Su Luan feel frightened. The orc shamans had already made their move, and the human wizards were not backing down either. Su Len could already sense at least 4 legendaries on the battlefield. As soon as the orc shaman made his move, a middle-aged priest stepped up. At the same time, more than 10 wizards stepped up to help. Even so, they could barely hold on. Fortunately, the remaining adepts and priests were much more powerful. They gradually suppressed the orc shamans. Su Luan's heart shook when he saw the beastman mammoths charging. These things were simply weapons of war. If these 200 mammoths were to charge at the Northern Citadel's army, then even if the Northern Citadel's army could resist them, they would suffer heavy losses. It was even possible that the entire army would be wiped out. 1 or 2 of these mammoths were easy to deal with, but once there were enough of them, they would be unstoppable. Su Len was curious about the orcs' plan. He didn't expect them to have such a trump card. If Marquis Winter didn't make a prompt decision to lead his knights forward, the entire human army would have been crushed by these mammoths. If the orcs had 500 mammoths, even Marquis Winter's knights wouldn't be able to hold on. These mammoths were powerful creatures on par with the land dragons. Although the human knights managed to stop these mammoths, they still suffered heavy losses. Out of 3,000 knights, it would be a miracle if a third of them could survive. No matter how this battle turned out, the Kingdom of Florence had suffered heavy losses. Compared to the battle between the Orc Chief and Marquis Winter, Su Len focused on the battle between the Orc Shaman and the human wizard priests. Both were legendaries, but the shaman was powerful enough to suppress a legendary priest and several great wizards. Other than being able to use divine spells, this shaman was also a wizard. His casting speed was shockingly fast. Bursting Fireball, Hold Human, Disintegrate, Dimensional Slash. One spell after another was cast. The humans were even running for their lives. There were even a few warriors who joined forces and used counterspell to interrupt his smooth casting. However, it was obvious that 3 of the magi were pale, and traces of blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. This was the backlash from counterspell. Their intelligence was lower than the orc shamans. Fortunately, the human spellcasters outnumbered the orc shamans. Together with the priests from the temples, the human spellcasters had a slight advantage. After the 2,000 soldiers from Cult joined the battle, the balance of the war finally shifted in favor of the humans. More than half of the 200 mammoths had fallen under the fearless attacks of the human knights. The humans had also paid a heavy price. On the right side of the battlefield, the elite beastman warriors were brandishing their heavy spiked clubs as they broke through the human defensive line. These fearless beastmen endured the spells and charged forward. Many of the beastmen had already been burnt black, but they were still crazily swinging their spiked clubs. Some wolf riders wandered around the edge of the battlefield. Since Sulen killed 3,000 orcs, there were only 4,000 wolf riders left. These wolf riders swung their machetes and followed the orcs into the human formation. Then they tore the human formation apart bit by bit. The human spearman formation was directly broken through by the wolf riders. In a short period of time, the human spearmen were divided into a dozen groups. If there were no accidents, these human spearmen would soon be devoured by the orcs. However, at this moment fireballs fell into the wolf riders. The violent explosion sent more than 10 people flying. A wolf rider instantly twisted his body and hid beside his wolf. The wolf was blasted into a bloody mess on the spot. He was also sent flying for more than 10 meters and fell heavily. Before he could struggle to get up, a long spear had pierced his throat. With the support of the wizards, the human spearmen launched a counterattack against the wolf riders. Asterisk clang. Asterisk a loud sound was heard. Roges's figure descended from the sky and swung his giant axe. Marquis Winter held his spear with both hands to block, but the result was that he was sent flying a few meters away with his spear. The orcs could suppress the humans in terms of strength. This was true even for legends. The only human race that could compete with the orcs in terms of strength was the barbarians. Marquis Winter stomped hard on the ground to stop himself from falling back. He then roared and rushed up. A flash of light flashed on his body, and the wind created by his spear was ravaged by him. Dang, dang, dang! Sounds of collisions rang out one after another as intense energy surged out from between the two of them. Under a series of rapid attacks, Rogesus couldn't dodge in time and was directly hit. However, the injuries weren't serious. The fierce battle also made Marquis Winter's hand that was holding the spear slightly tremble. Very good. I'm going to twist your head off and use it as a wine vessel. The orc chief roared with blood all over his body. Marquis Winter let out a low roar. All the muscles on his body bulged, and twisted blue veins appeared. A bloodthirsty light flashed in his eyes as he said, "You will become my stepping stone to become stronger." Bloodthirsty rage. The orc chief roared, and the energy on his body rose again. His eyes had turned completely red, and his already tall body began to expand again. Roar! Rogesus looked at Winter, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He then rushed up with his giant axe. The giant axe tore through the air and swept over with a sharp whistling sound. There was not a single soldier within a few dozen meters of the two sides. This kind of battle was not something that anyone could interfere with. Anyone who got close might be implicated. In his berserk state, Rogesus' strength became even more powerful. As soon as Winter came into contact with him, his entire body was pushed back by a powerful force. Facing this situation, Winter's expression changed, and the energy in his body also erupted. Even so, he was still pushed back by the orc chief's attacks. Following the orc chief's roar, the giant axe heavily smashed down. Winter's expression changed greatly, and he rolled forward to dodge. The giant axe smashed into the ground, and a 10-meter-long crack appeared on the ground. After dodging this attack, Winter didn't relax at all. The spear in his hand flashed with light. Berserk assault. His body suddenly sped up several times, and before Rogessus could completely turn around, he instantly stabbed out. The distance of 10 meters was crossed as if he had teleported, and the spear fiercely stabbed into Rogessus' back. A sharp pain came, and Rogessus waved his arms, and a fierce expression flashed across his face. Whirlwind slash. His gigantic body spun rapidly under the influence of the giant axe. He didn't seem to care about the terrifying wound that the spear had left on his body. The giant axe swept out horizontally, causing blood to splatter everywhere. A figure quickly retreated, but even though he was already moving at an extreme speed, the sharp giant axe still swept across his chest. Marquis Winter's body flew back, and he rolled before crouching down. A large amount of blood gushed out from the terrifying wound on his chest. The white bone stubble made one's heart tremble, and one could even clearly see the squirming organs inside the wound. This attack almost cut Marquis Winter in half, but the orc chief didn't have it easy either. A terrifying wound appeared on his back, and one could even see his spine. However, with the powerful body of an orc, this kind of injury wasn't fatal. Soon, the surrounding muscles contracted, and the wound gradually stopped bleeding. At this moment, the Beastman chieftain let out a crazy roar as he brandished his great axe and rushed towards Marquis Winter. The great axe was as big as a millstone, and it looked like a light toy in his hands. Winter's face changed when he saw the giant axe coming towards him again. The wound on his chest had greatly affected his body's flexibility, which was very deadly in battle. While Winter was in a tough battle, the human army began to counterattack with the help of the wizards. The 200 war mammoths had all been killed, and the human knights had also suffered heavy casualties. However, without the war mammoths, the remaining human knights began to charge again. The orcs no longer had any powerful soldiers that could stop the charge of the human knights. The Knights of Cult City had merged with the reinforcements, forming an army of 2,000 knights. The knights charged again like a flood of steel, rushing towards the orc army with unstoppable momentum. The orc warriors swung their spiked clubs, wanting to fight back, but the warhorses rammed into their chests. The full-body armor of the warhorses carried a force of a few tons. Even the strong bodies of the orcs could not withstand it. The ribs in front of their chests were directly broken, and blood spurted out like a fountain. Then, the orcs were trampled by the huge hooves of the horses. The charging knights carried an unstoppable momentum as they charged into the orc army. The orc army was retreating under the charge of the human knights. Spells exploded one after another, and the orc army was on the verge of collapse. Even if the orcs resisted with all their might, they were still like waves in the ocean when faced with the charge of the human knights. They were so insignificant. More orcs began to retreat. P.S. I forgot to post after writing. Fortunately, I discovered it in time. Chapter 270. The orc army began to crumble. With the charge of 2,000 knights and all kinds of spells from the wizards, the orcs finally couldn't hold on any longer. In fact, the human army had also reached their limit. In fact, if it wasn't for Sulen defeating the orcs in the back and forcing the orcs to send out another 10,000 men to stabilize the rear, this battle would have continued for a while. Now that they had lost 10,000 men, the orcs were clearly not strong enough. As time passed, the humans' attacks became stronger and stronger, and the orcs' counterattack became weaker and weaker. The army was collapsing like a mountain. At the same time, the battle between Marquis Winter and Raucus had reached the most critical moment. Ha ha ha! Did you see that? Your orc army has been defeated. If you surrender now, I can consider letting you live. Marquis Winter laughed as he saw the orc army crumbling. He looked a bit miserable right now. Although the wound on his chest was no longer bleeding, his fighting power had decreased a lot. Really? As long as I kill you, the human army will lose their commander, and the orcs will be able to turn the tide. Raucus said coldly. Raucus, I admit that you are very powerful. I am not your opponent, but it won't be that easy for you to kill me. Marquis Winter's face slightly changed. At this time, a terrifying power suddenly emerged from Rogessus's body. A blood-red radiance seemed to have materialized as it enveloped his body. Blood kill cut. The blood-red light quickly spread on his body and wrapped around the weapon in his hand. The dazzling blood-red light covered his vision, making him look like a red lightning bolt. A red light flashed across the sky. It looked like it teleported and directly appeared next to Winter. The giant axe in his hand left behind a series of afterimages as it slashed across. Everything happened so suddenly. Winter only made a few dodging gestures, but the giant axe had already swept past him. Everything in front of him was split apart. Rocka's speed was beyond human vision. In the next second, Marquis Winter was chopped in half by the giant axe. Plop! Whence tall body fell to the ground, and Rogthus slowly got up. His breathing was very rapid, and his expression was very tired. The hand that was holding the giant axe was even slightly trembling. The back that was no longer bleeding ruptured again, and blood gushed out like a fountain. It was obvious that the attack just now had also caused him to suffer heavy injuries. You've been raised for a long time, but you haven't experienced a battle of deep thought. You seem to have forgotten how to fight. Didn't your teacher tell you not to talk too much in battle? Rogue thus raised Marquis Winter's head and said slowly, "Don't let your guard down until the battle is over." After killing Went, Rogas grabbed his head and roared, "Wen is dead!" The deafening sound instantly spread throughout the battlefield. Even in the chaotic and noisy battlefield, this sound could be heard clearly. The human army that was chasing after the orcs suddenly stopped when they heard this voice. "Don't believe his lies." At this moment, a gentle and deep voice sounded in their ears. The voice was like a spring breeze, making them involuntarily choose to believe him. "Continue to attack and drive these orcs out of our homeland." The hesitant human army no longer cared about anything else and continued to pursue the orcs. On the other side of the battlefield, a few figures in wizard robes looked at the chaotic army in front of them and said, "Doraeon, luckily you made a move in time. It's just a pity about Marquis Winter." A wizard in a red robe next to them said with pity. When they saw Marquis Winter die in battle, these wizards knew things were not going well. They immediately used a spell to amplify and hint to minimize the impact of Marquis Winter's death. Seeing that the human army did not collapse as he expected, and instead continued to chase after him, Rokas's face finally changed. However, the general situation of the battlefield could no longer be changed by him alone. If he was a legendary wizard, he could cast a powerful area of effect attack spell, then there would still be a chance. However, the only one who had this ability, the Great Shaman, was tightly entangled by the priest and several wizards. As long as he wanted to cast a powerful spell, those wizards would immediately counter it with spells. The Great Shaman couldn't do anything at all. Although Rogas killed the problem, he was also like an arrow at the end of its flight. How many people could he kill by himself? The entire battlefield was collapsing. The orcs had lost their momentum. Rogas took a look at Cult City and turned to leave. His body was not in a good condition, and he was severely injured. Sulen had legendary strength, but once the orcs were defeated, he would be surrounded by the humans. He knew things were not going to work out. Although he was extremely angry, he still chose to retreat. After making up his mind, Rogues thus led the orc army to retreat, while the humans chased after them. With Rogues thus leading the orc army did not collapse. As the orcs retreated, they left behind a large number of corpses, creating a horrifying scene. The human army also suffered heavy losses. In fact, if you only looked at the number of casualties, the human casualties were much higher than the orcs. The orcs left 30,000 corpses here, while the human casualties were as high as 50,000. In the following battle, the orcs left another 6,000 corpses and got rid of the humans. The human army did not continue to pursue. Winning this war was also very thrilling for the humans. Moreover, these soldiers were already tired from the journey and had experienced a fierce battle. If it were not for the support of the priests, these human soldiers would have been unable to hold on. After the orcs were defeated, some people could not hold on anymore. Therefore, the humans did not pursue the orcs. After the cruel battle, they also needed time to rest. However, in Cult City, some nobles did not intend to let go of this good opportunity. In the battle that just ended, these nobles did not go to the battlefield. They hid in the city and watched. Now that the orcs were defeated, these nobles finally had the courage to rush out of the city and pursue the orcs. After winning, the human army began to seize the time to reorganize. At the same time, the death of Marquis Winter cast a shadow over this victory. As the most important legendary figure of the Florentine royal family, his death greatly damaged the strength of the Florentine kingdom. At the same time, there was a slight deviation in the original balance. The Florentine kingdom was not dominated by the royal family alone. There were many nobles who had the right to inherit the throne. Among them, the three strongest electors were not as strong as the royal family, but they were not much weaker. In the past, the Florentine royal family had two legendary figures. Now, with Winter's death, they had lost their absolute advantage. The victory of the battle made the human army excited, but Winter's death was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue. A legendary powerhouse had died so easily in this battle. The next morning, the human army had an early breakfast and continued to pursue the orcs. Marquis Winter was still very popular in the army. Because of his death, many of the human army shouted for revenge and began to counterattack the orcs. In addition, since the start of the battle, the humans had lost more than 100,000 soldiers and the hatred between both sides was very deep. The orcs were not any better. Including the orcs killed by Sulen, they lost 50,000 to 60,000 people in this battle. The remaining soldiers were basically all injured and their morale was low. But fortunately, the orcs left 10,000 orc soldiers in the rear camp in advance. With the addition of these fresh troops, the orcs did not collapse all the way. In fact, due to the reluctance of the nobles in Cult City, the orcs seized the opportunity and launched an ambush. After the battle, the soldiers of the nobles in Cult City suffered heavy casualties. If it weren't for the arrival of the human army, the nobles in Cult City might not have been able to return alive. After being ambushed by the orcs, the nobles finally behaved themselves. With the addition of the 10,000 orcs, the human army stopped pressing the orcs in order to avoid more casualties. However, the humans still had the advantage. After the orcs retreated, the human army began to occupy the cities that were previously occupied by the orcs, as well as the gold, silver, and jewelry that the orcs plundered. In order to speed up their retreat, the orcs didn't bring the valuables with them. Instead, they only transported the food that they plundered. The large amount of wealth made the generals jealous. According to the original plan, the nobles who abandoned the cities and fled would be stripped of their territories and redistributed to the generals who had contributed to the kingdom to increase the strength of the royal family. However, this would definitely be opposed by the original nobles. This resulted in the conflict between the Kingdom of Florence's army and the Kingdom of Florence's army constantly recovering the lost territories. Sulen wasn't concerned about the conflict between the Kingdom of Florence's army. Instead, he was paying attention to the orcs. After the orcs suffered heavy losses, they retreated all the way to the north. As they brought along large amounts of food, the orcs retreated slowly. Other than the difficulty of surviving in the northern wilderness, the orcs also launched this war to obtain large amounts of food. In the beginning, the orcs still had thoughts of occupying this place. However, after this huge defeat, that thought disappeared completely. Now, their plan was to snatch enough food to return to their homeland. In order to transport the food back, Rogus personally led his men to buy time. Sullen's target this time was this orc chieftain. The orc chieftain was severely injured in the previous battle and had yet to recover. In the last battle, Su Luin obtained a legendary skill point and a lot of good things from the platinum treasure chest. This time, if he could kill Rogexus, he would at least get a platinum treasure chest. This level of things couldn't be obtained so easily. Chapter 271. At night, there was not a single ray of light in the sky. Even the stars were covered by thick dark clouds. Bonfires had already been lit up in the orc camp. More than 5,000 orcs were led by Rogessus to cover the rear. At this moment, Rogessus was feeling a little uneasy in his simple tent. Although they had suffered heavy losses in this attack on the human kingdom, the food they had obtained was enough to feed the entire tribe for a year or two. They had also killed a legendary human figure, which made the enemies behind them feel a lingering fear. Without a legendary figure chasing after them, Rogathus didn't put the humans in his eyes. However, he was feeling very restless tonight. About 10 kilometers away from the orc camp, Sulen was observing the movements of the orcs through the strategic map. Among the red marks, there was a purple mark. It was the orc chieftain Rogathus. Time slowly passed. When he turned on the magic clock, it was already 2 o'clock in the morning. This was the time when the orcs were sleeping the most, and also the time when they were most vulnerable to sneak attacks. "Let's begin." Sulen looked at the time and said to Alex. Alex was already prepared. Under her command, the harpies that were resting in the trees immediately woke up and flew towards the orc camp under her lead. These harpies had lived in the underground world for a long time, so they had night vision. They were completely unaffected in this kind of dark night. 3,000 harpies flew into the sky under Alex's lead. They then identified the direction and flew towards the orc camp. After the harpies set off, Sulen also led the rest of the troops and began to move. In order to deal with these orcs, Sulen had brought more than half of the northern city's army. It wasn't easy for an army to march in the dark. Luckily, many of the northern city's soldiers had night vision, which greatly reduced the difficulty of marching. Under the effect of magic, the sound of thousands of soldiers marching was minimized. The northern city's army wasn't slow at all. It only took them 10 minutes to cover the distance of 10 kilometers. Just as they arrived, the harpies launched their first wave of attack. 3,000 harpies flew to the sky above the orc camp. Then, a large number of simple incendiary bombs filled with kerosene, charcoal, and white sugar fell from the sky. These incendiary bombs shattered when they hit the ground, and the kerosene inside them rose up to a meter high. This kerosene had charcoal and white sugar added to it, so it was very sticky. Kerosene splattered everywhere and ignited the surrounding tents. The sleeping orcs were startled awake, and those who were slow to react were quickly engulfed in flames and burned to ashes. A large number of Molotov cocktails fell from the sky like a meteor shower, filling the sky with flames. Sulen gave each of the harpies 10 Molotov cocktails. The 30,000 Molotov cocktails consumed all the kerosene in Northgard City. Even more than half of the white sugar produced this month had been consumed. However, the effect was very good. Many beastmen woke up and tried to put out the fire, but they quickly discovered that these flames weren't ordinary flames. Many beastmen who were infected by these flames kept rolling on the ground, trying to put out the fire, but the result was that the flames spread all over their bodies. A few beastmen who wanted to help were also caught by the flames when they approached, scaring them into running away. A large number of beastmen screamed and frantically tried to put out the fire. In the end, in just a few breaths, these beastmen were turned into human-shaped torches. The entire camp was completely engulfed in a sea of fire. More than 30,000 Molotov cocktails were quickly thrown down. The harpies who had completed their mission began to evacuate under Alex's lead. Rogathus was awakened by the noise outside. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the entire camp was engulfed in flames. Seeing this situation, Rogathus made a prompt decision and immediately led his people to rush out of the camp. As soon as they arrived at the camp, they saw a group of well-equipped soldiers waiting outside. The flames in the camp were constantly burning. There weren't many options left for them. If they didn't want to be burned to death, they could only rush out. "Despicable humans! I'm going to kill you!" A large number of orcs were burned to ashes in the flames. Rogathus' eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. When he saw the humans blocking his way, he roared and rushed out with the rest of the orcs. "Archers! Rain of arrows!" Seeing the orcs rushing up, Sulen didn't have any expression and directly ordered. The archers of the northern city immediately started shooting at the front gate of the camp. Arrows rained down from the sky. Because these orcs were under fire attack, they didn't wear any protective gear. Facing this kind of dense rain of arrows, they simply couldn't resist. When the rain of arrows fell, a large number of orcs were directly shot into hedgehogs. Only a few powerful orcs relied on their weapons to deflect the arrows. The orcs who rushed out of the camp suffered heavy casualties in an instant. After that, the archers didn't stop and continued to shoot. Although it wasn't as dense as before, it was still continuous. After a short while, hundreds of orcs fell on the path of the charge. When Rogthus saw a large number of orcs being shot to death, his eyes were completely bloodshot. His expression was ferocious like a crazy beast. He lightly covered his eyes with his arm and completely ignored the rain of arrows in the sky. He then accelerated and rushed towards the army of the northern city. Sullen's hand shook, and the purple dragon halberd suddenly appeared. In the next second, his figure appeared at the front of the army. Facing this kind of legend rank expert, even if he was injured and couldn't use his full strength, it was still not something that could be stopped by anyone below legend rank. If he rushed in, the army of the northern city would definitely suffer heavy losses. Lightning constantly jumped on his body, and there were also large amounts of lightning arcs jumping on the purple dragon halberd. As he continued to move forward, the lightning became more and more intense. Legend rank? Seeing Sullen's performance, Rogthus's scarlet eyes slightly shrank. He didn't expect the humans to send another legend rank expert so quickly. This caught him a little off guard. If he was in his peak state, he wouldn't be afraid of any legend rank expert. However, with his current combat power, it was hard to say who would win against this legend rank expert. So what if you are a legend rank expert? If I can kill Went, I can also kill you. Seeing the lightning flashing on Sullen's body, Rogthus roared and then accelerated towards Sulen. As Rogthus roared, he actually directly waved his giant axe and cut open a wound on his body. Then, scarlet blood gushed out from his body. As if it contained some kind of powerful magic, after the blood appeared, it burned like kerosene. Rogthus looked at Sulen with a crazy expression. The flames on his body were naturally not real flames, but they were much more powerful than real flames. Blood flame. It was said that only some strong people could use this powerful skill. This skill could provide a large amount of power for a short period of time, but the side effect was also very strong. This was a kind of power that burned one's life. Every second consumed one's life. Although the lifespan of a legend rank expert was several times that of an ordinary person, very few people would use this skill. However, for Rogthus, he had no choice but to use it. If he didn't use it today, then it was very likely that he would never be able to use it again. Since that was the case, he would naturally use it to fight with his life. If he failed, then everything would be over. If he won, then naturally it would be better. The red blood flame wrapped his whole body, and even his weapon was wrapped in a layer of blood flame. In this case, Rogthus naturally wouldn't waste time. He charged towards Sulen. Seeing the orc charging towards him, Sulen didn't hesitate. A powerful lightning energy emerged from his body. Thunder domain. Strong lightning exploded and directly lit up the night sky. Sullen's body was completely wrapped in lightning energy. He really looked like the god of thunder from legends. Facing the orc charging towards him, Sulen was not afraid. He directly moved his body and rushed forward. He couldn't dodge. Once he dodged, Rogthus would rush into the army of the northern city. With his blood flame activated, all the soldiers of the northern city were no match for him. At that time, even if he killed Rogthus, the army of the northern city would also suffer heavy losses. The crazy fighting spirit combined with his huge body and the power of a legend rank expert allowed him to deal crushing damage to any enemy below the legend rank. With the support of the blood flame, he was confident that he could kill that human with one strike. Boom! The millstone-sized axe was swung by him as if it was weightless. He directly chopped towards Sullen's head. It was a simple move, but it gave people a feeling that it was impossible to dodge. Sullen's halberd swept around, and a powerful lightning energy appeared in an instant. A huge rumbling sound was heard as Sulen firmly blocked Rogthus' attack. Every orc that reached the legend rank was a master of battle. Their experience of reaching the legend rank step by step moved even Sulen. These orcs had killed their way through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Whirlwind slash. Red blood flame appeared on Rogthus's axe. It was like a huge burning torch. The sharp edge of the blade was hidden in the fire, and it directly chopped towards Sullen's head. Lightning weapon. The originally powerful lightning energy suddenly exploded. The lightning energy within Sullen's body crazily revolved. At this time, the purple dragon halberd was completely wrapped in lightning. In the next second, the two weapons collided once again. Bang! 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 War roar! Sulen roared, and the sound instantly exploded. The soldiers near the battlefield felt their vision turn black, and their ears were ringing. They felt dizzy, and it took them a few seconds to recover. Rogthus, who was the closest to the battlefield, was the one who suffered the most damage. His body stiffened. Sullen's long spear swept horizontally, and directly deflected the axe away. He then slashed a terrifying wound on the opponent's chest. Chapter 272. Sullen's halberd swept across and left a bloody wound on Rogessa's chest. The fine armor on Rogessa's body was cut open without any resistance. His tough skin was also cut open. Even the blood flame on his body was cut open, but it recovered in a breath's time. Bolts of thunder and lightning jumped on Su Luan's body and weapons. A rolling thundercloud had appeared in the sky, and bursts of thunder came from the sky. Rogessus looked at the thunderclouds with fear. His eyes were filled with blood light. The injury made him even crazier. Roar! There was a flash of blood, and the blood flames on his body surged once again. The giant axe in his hand slashed down with a sharp whistle. Originally, the physical quality of the orcs was very high, and they could easily suppress warriors of the same rank. Coupled with the skills they had honed through countless life and death battles, this orc chieftain was also a powerhouse in the legendary rank. Whirlwind slash. Rogessus' giant axe was wrapped in a layer of blood-red flame. The sharp edge of the axe was hidden in the flame. It was fiercely chopping towards Sullen's head. The entire space seemed to be within the attack range of the giant axe. Sullen's eyes flashed. Facing Rogessus' attack, his body seemed to have already predicted the trajectory of the giant axe. He dodged it by a hair's breadth. Rogessus' full-strength attack did not hit the enemy, and it directly hit the ground. Naturally, it was very difficult to change the trajectory of an attack with such ferocious strength. Moreover, it was very easy for an opening to appear in the next attack. Rogessus used his full strength to directly hit the ground. The giant axe directly split the ground with a loud rumble, leaving a deep gully in the ground. The surrounding ground became a complete mess. Sullen's body flashed, and he had already arrived at Rogessus' side. He then fiercely waved his halberd. The halberd drew an arc and fiercely stabbed towards Rogessus' back. If this attack hit, the purple dragon halberd could easily pierce through his heart. Moreover, the lightning power on it would destroy all of Rogessus' internal organs. Sensing the danger, Rogessus' body directly rolled forward due to the inertia brought by the giant axe. The purple dragon halberd only left a wound on his back. Feeling the pain from his back, Rogessus roared and instantly pulled back the axe in his hand. The axe carried an imposing aura as it fiercely chopped down. Spinning slash. Sulen immediately stopped his pursuit. He held his halberd horizontally in front of him. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. Su Luan felt a huge force coming from the weapon. In fact, in this kind of head-on battle, heavy weapons had a clear advantage. Although the great axe was a common weapon, there weren't many people who could use it well. Many people were full of flaws when using it. When facing a rapier or other agile weapon, they often couldn't hit their opponents, or their opponents would seize the opportunity to counterattack. However, the orc chieftain in front of him had already mastered the great axe to the point of perfection. Even Boulder and Johnson were slightly inferior to him in this aspect. His attacks were powerful and heavy, and he didn't have the sluggishness of a heavy weapon. His movements were quick, and he didn't give you a chance to counterattack. Stab! After blocking Rogessus' heavy attack, Sullen's expression didn't change at all. Countless streaks of lightning enveloped him, and these streaks of lightning would injure anyone near him. For example, Rogessus would be attacked by the streaks of lightning in the air every second. If an ordinary person was in this kind of environment, their body would be paralyzed by the streaks of lightning, and they wouldn't be able to move. However, these injuries didn't have much effect on Rogessus. Most of these attacks were blocked by the layer of blood flames on his body. The purple dragon halberd pierced towards Rogessus with a streak of lightning. The orc chieftain raised his great axe like a shield, and the broad surface of the axe directly blocked half of his body. Sparks flew everywhere as the purple dragon halberd and the great axe collided. A huge force was transmitted, and the two of them couldn't help but retreat. Sulen took a step back and stabilized his body. Then he rushed towards the orc chieftain again. Rogessus was pushed back 5 or 6 steps by this huge force. When he saw Sulen rushing towards him again, his eyes flashed with a fierce light. He roared and ignored the purple dragon halberd that was pointed at his chest. The great axe in his hand spun around and chopped towards Sulen's head. Su Luin frowned slightly when he saw that Rogessus was going to perish together with Su Luin. Although he was confident that he could stab Rogessus in the chest before his attack arrived, there was only a 30% chance that he could dodge the axe. Su Luin didn't want to seriously injure Rogessus, who had long been regarded as a big EXP gift pack. Although he knew that this was Rogessus's plan, Sulen had no choice but to change his strategy. The purple dragon halberd was raised and blocked the great axe attack. Rogessus's eyes flashed with a tyrannical light. The great axe in his hand drew an arc and chopped towards Sulen again. Sulen's halberd swept horizontally and blocked the attack again. Rogessus didn't care about it at all. He used the rebound force to increase the speed of the great axe in his hand. Clang, clang, clang. A series of metallic sounds rang out. Rogessus' attacks were like a storm, getting faster and faster. The red flames on the giant axe kept spreading to the purple dragon halberd. However, as soon as it touched the halberd, it was torn apart by the powerful lightning power. Clang! Sulen's body flickered with lightning and blocked all of Rogessus's violent attacks. The orc chieftain's strength didn't have the slightest advantage in front of Sulen. In terms of agility, Sulen could easily leave him in the dust. Even with the legendary physique, Sulen couldn't hold on for long under Rogessus's powerful attacks. Soon, Sulen felt that the strength in his hands had weakened, and the frequency of his attacks was no longer increasing. Sensing the weakening of his attacks, Sulen's pent-up anger instantly exploded. Just a moment ago, he was suppressed by Rogessus, who had gone berserk. After a short burst of power, he became weak. Rogessus's attack just now could seriously injure a legend with lower strength. If they were unlucky, it wouldn't be surprising if they were killed. Heroic, powerful lightning instantly burst out from Sulen's body. The purple dragon halberd in his hand became a weapon made of lightning. The lightning swept across and directly sent Rogessus flying. It also left a charred wound on his chest. Countless lightning snakes burst out from his body. It was as if he was being pierced by thousands of steel needles. Damn human! The great pain made Rogessus's body tremble. Although Rogessus had already gone berserk, this state couldn't block out the pain. Suren's cold eyes didn't change in the slightest. The battlefield was filled with the desperate roars of the orcs. At this time, the whole camp had completely turned into a sea of fire. Barbarian warriors and heavy armored spearmen surrounded the whole camp. All the orcs that rushed out were killed by them. The archers in the back were constantly lighting arrows and then throwing them in. From afar, the orc camp looked like a huge bonfire. The roars of the orcs before they died made Rogessus even angrier. The blood flames on his body became more and more vigorous. This showed that he was burning more of his life force. In order to defeat Sulen, Rogessus didn't care about anything else. If this continued, even if he defeated Sulen, he would die because of the exhaustion of his life force at the end of the battle. But at this time, Rogessus had no other choice. Just when he was about to burst out again, Sulen's figure flashed and rushed up. Rogessus waved his axe and used the same move again. He wanted to use the same move as before, But this time Sulen was already prepared. His body quickly moved around his attack and continued to attack from the side. Facing Sulen's sudden change of move, Rogessus also changed his move. But his speed was far from Sulen's rhythm. The sky was filled with lightning constantly flashing around Rogessus. The powerful electricity gathered and pierced through the blood flames on his body. Under the constant attack of the lightning, the blood flames on Rogessus' body were constantly scattered. Blood kill cut. In the face of Suren's rapid attacks, Rogessus was completely exhausted. He naturally understood that if he continued, it wouldn't be long before he would be exhausted to death. Seeing this situation, Rogessus made up his mind and once again used the move he used to kill Marquis Winter. A bloody light suddenly appeared. Rogessus completely ignored Sulen's attack. His body was like a red lightning bolt as he quickly rushed towards Sulen. How could Sulen, who had already seen this move, not be unprepared? Although the attack was sudden, he seemed to have predicted it in advance. His body instantly dodged. Sixth sense. The sixth sense that he had just obtained not long ago once again worked. He successfully dodged Rogessus' attack. Then, he exerted strength in his arms and twisted his waist. The purple dragon halberd swept towards Rogessus' chest. Although blood kill cut was fast, it was more of a straight line attack. It was impossible to dodge Sulen's attack. Then, the purple dragon halberd carried a powerful lightning power and instantly struck Rogessus' body. Rogessus' huge body flew backwards at an extremely fast speed. Sulen didn't stop. His body followed closely behind. The purple dragon halberd in his hand continuously struck at Rogessus' vital points. For a moment, several wounds appeared on Rogessus' body. The heavy axe chopped down, creating a crack that was more than a few meters deep in front of Sulen. Sulen, who had dodged the attack by sticking close to the edge of the axe, didn't hesitate at all. He exerted strength in his feet and directly moved his body a distance of nearly 5 meters. Silver Dragon Inverse Scales Spear. Sulen fiercely stomped on the ground, creating a crater on the ground beside him. Then his body shot out like lightning. He rushed over from Rogessus' left side. The purple dragon halberd in his hand transformed into a silver dragon. The dragon's entire body was composed of lightning. It carried an indomitable aura as it pierced towards the enemy's heart. The threat of death came, causing all the hair on Rogessus' body to stand on end. His heart rapidly beat. When he saw the mighty move in front of him, a feeling of unstoppable welled up in his heart. In this situation where he couldn't dodge, Rogessus didn't dodge. He had made up his mind to give Sulen a ruthless blow even if he had to die. Bloody flames instantly gathered on the axe. Like a burning torch, it directly appeared in front of Sulen's path. Chapter 273. Sixth Sense. Time seemed to have stopped. At that moment, the thunder dragon swung its tail, and the purple dragon halberd's tail hit the giant axe with amazing skill. It directly swung the axe away, and then it rushed towards Rogessus without slowing down. Lightning exploded, and the lightning dragon directly pierced through Rogessus's body. All the lightning disappeared, and blood crazily gushed out. Rogessus's tall body stiffened on the spot, and in the next second, a powerful lightning exploded from his body. Countless electric snakes shot out from the orc chief's body. Then Rogessus's sturdy body fell down with a loud bang. Congratulations, host! You have successfully defeated the orc army. You have obtained an epic victory. Your name will spread throughout the human kingdom and the northern wasteland. Prestige plus 25. Annihilation of the Orc Army. August 1687 of the Huiwe calendar. The orcs in the north retreated. You led the army of the northern town to ambush the orc army in the stony wasteland. With the help of the Harpy's flying ability, you launched a fire attack on the orc camp in the early morning. A large number of Molotov cocktails fell, and the orc camp was engulfed in a sea of fire. Under these circumstances, the orc chief tried to break out of the encirclement, but you were able to stop him. Moreover, during the battle you were able to kill the orc chief Rogthus. You have been detected to have killed 2 legendary orcs. You have received the title Orc Terminator. Your relationship with the orcs has been reduced to mortal enemy. You have obtained the goodwill of the Kingdom of Florence. Your prestige in the Kingdom of Florence has been increased. Your relationship with the Kingdom of Florence has been raised to respected. Congratulations, host. You have successfully killed the orc chief Rogessus. You have obtained 34,850 EXP. You have obtained a platinum treasure chest. You have obtained a legend skill point. Congratulations, host. Under your command, your army has successfully defeated the orc army. You have obtained 8,930 EXP. You have obtained 2 gold treasure chests. You have obtained the item Dark Iron. Congratulations, host. Your EXP is full. You have leveled up. You are currently level 25. You have obtained 1 gold treasure chest. You have obtained 2 attribute points and 2 skill points. Ding! After a fierce battle, your weapon proficiency has increased. Your gun proficiency has reached 255. Beastman Terminator. Title, Acquisition Requirements. Automatically acquired after killing 2 legendary beastmen. After equipping this title, attacks against beastmen will be increased by 15%, deterrence towards beastmen +3, chance of beastmen escaping on the battlefield +3, chance of enraging beastmen. Following the fall of the orc Roxas, Sullen's ears continuously rang with system notifications. This battle was still very risky for Sulen. After all, he didn't expect Rogessus to have the ability to burn his life force, which could greatly increase his combat power. As for the rest of the beastmen in the camp, they were all dead by now. After the Harpies' airstrike, the camp had turned into a sea of fire. Some of the beastmen were burned to death, while the rest died trying to break out of the encirclement. The camp was surrounded by the northern fortress city. The beastmen were no match for the elites of the northern fortress city. Even though they tried their best to break out, they still failed. "Sir, are you all right?" A guard came to Sullen's side and asked. "I'm fine. Bury them all," Sulen ordered, then turned around and left. After all the beastmen were dead, the archers had already stopped shooting. The army of the northern fortress city began to clean up the battlefield. The corpses of the beastmen needed to be buried on the spot, and the weapons needed to be retrieved. The fire in the camp only went out when the sun rose in the east. After waiting for another 2 hours, the temperature had completely dropped. Only then did the army of the northern fortress city enter the camp to clean up the battlefield. After the fire, most of the beastmen's corpses were turned into charcoal. Tents, leather armor, food, and other supplies were also burned. The only thing left was some iron equipment. However, most of the iron equipment was burnt black, and some were even completely deformed. The iron armor was also burnt black. The soldiers of the northern fortress city didn't care about these weapons and equipment, so they could only bring them back to the forge to be reforged. Now that the northern fortress city had gray dwarven blacksmiths, the quality of their equipment had significantly increased. Many of the weapons and equipment had already reached +1 rank even if they weren't enchanted. After arranging for people to clean up the battlefield, Sulen began to look at his loot. Killing the Beastman chieftain gave him a platinum treasure chest and a legendary skill point. Defeating the Beastman army gave him 2 gold treasure chests, and leveling up gave him a gold treasure chest. Currently, there were 4 platinum treasure chests and 3 gold treasure chests in his inventory. Apart from that, there were also 2 pieces of dark iron. Sulen calmed himself down and washed the bloodstains off his body. Only then did he open his inventory and open the treasure chests. For lights flashed one after another, and the sound of a system notification rang in Sullen's ears. "Congratulations, host. You have opened a platinum treasure chest. You have received a legendary soul crystal. Congratulations, host. You have opened a gold treasure chest. You have received the item Stardust. Congratulations, host. You have opened a gold treasure chest. You have received the item Commander's Tally, Crossbowman. Congratulations, host. You have opened a gold treasure chest. You have received the item Wonder Blueprint, Sky Garden, Arcane Garden. Hearing the system notification, Su Len began to look at the items this time. The most valuable item was naturally the legendary soul crystal. This was a purple crystal that was slightly bigger than an egg. The crystal was very transparent, and it was filled with powerful soul energy. This item could be used as a currency in the multiverse. Many powerful creatures in the multiverse needed this item. It was also very precious to Su Len. Many powerful legendary magic items required it to be made. However, Su Len did not plan to make any legendary items now. He planned to use the soul crystal on the Sorcerer Tower. Hathaway's Sorcerer Tower was still under construction. Although there was still a long time before it was completed, it was time to put the tower spirit on the agenda. Whether a Sorcerer Tower was strong or not depended on the tower spirit. In a legendary sorcerer's Sorcerer Tower, a legendary tower spirit was the standard. A Sorcerer Tower may have several tower spirits. These tower spirits were the managers of the Sorcerer Tower. They helped the sorcerer manage the Sorcerer Tower and assisted the sorcerer in various experiments. At the same time, they could command the Golem army or the Sorcerer Tower's weapon system to fight back against the enemy when the sorcerer was not around. The tower spirit was directly related to the strength of the Sorcerer Tower. Making a tower spirit required at least a high-grade soul crystal. However, this kind of tower spirit was only a low-grade tower spirit. Its ability was limited. Even during the Arcane Empire, this kind of tower spirit was not recognized by the Arcanists at all. Only the legendary tower spirit made of a legendary soul crystal was a true tower spirit. The tower spirit made of a high-grade soul crystal was more used to make the Golem auxiliary system. During the Arcane Empire, the golems could be loaded with abilities such as precision strike, defensive defense, and so on. The sorcerers did not understand this technology, so the golems now did not have the special abilities of the ancient golems. Su Len naturally did not intend to use a low-grade tower spirit. Otherwise, it would be a waste to build such a legendary sorcerer tower. Now that he had a legendary soul crystal, he was naturally ready to use it. It was said that during the Arcane Empire, the tower spirit of the floating space city required a demigod tower spirit to operate. After putting away the soul crystal, Su Len picked up the rest of the things. Stardust sand was a kind of material from the astral world which was very valuable. After all, this thing could only be collected in the astral world, or found a space crack to take the risk of collecting it. Stardust sand was an essential item in the production of many magic props. Now that Su Len did not have the strength to go to the astral world, this thing was naturally very precious. In addition to the Stardust sand, this time Su Len once again got a commander's seal. This commander's seal was a crossbowman. The crossbowman could be said to be a very powerful and fragile troop. The reason for its strength was that once a large number of crossbowmen formed a crossbow formation, they were completely a killing machine on the battlefield. Even the heavy cavalry would suffer heavy losses. The fragile side was that a single crossbowman or crossbowman was very easy to be restrained. Once close, the crossbowman's lethality was even worse than the archers. However, these shortcomings still did not change the fact that crossbowmen were a powerful troop. After using the commander's seal, Su Len got a complete crossbowman training method and also the method to make crossbows. Of course, now he only had the most basic method to make crossbows. In fact, crossbows could be upgraded on this basis. The range and power of crossbows could be improved, or it could be upgraded and transformed into a repeating crossbow. However, unlike other troop classes, the upgrade of crossbowmen was more about the upgrade of the crossbow. To upgrade the crossbow, he also needed to establish a weapons bureau dedicated to the study of crossbows. At the same time, this weapons bureau could not only study crossbows but also large ballistas. After understanding the recruitment conditions of crossbowmen, Su Len decided to start training crossbowmen when he returned to Northern Town and set up a weapons bureau. Compared to archers and spearmen, crossbowmen were easier to train and form a fighting force. As long as there was a crossbow, even a militia trained for a week could form a strong fighting force. Of course, crossbowmen had many shortcomings. The most obvious one was that they were expensive. It cost 100 kinner to train a crossbowman, most of which was the cost of the crossbow. Another problem was that crossbows were slow to fire. Su Len was also surprised by the blueprint he got from the last chest. This blueprint recorded all kinds of information about building the Sky Garden of Wonders. The Sky Garden was also known as the Arcane Garden. This kind of building required mana and was very difficult to build. Su Len looked at the materials needed to build it and was shocked. This thing required a lot of magic crystals, magic gems, high-quality marble, and obsidian as raw materials. However, after it was built, it would gain a lot of attribute bonuses. The most obvious one was that it increased the chances of newborns in the territory having the potential to become a wizard. Just this attribute alone made its value double. Chapter 274. It was not easy to become a wizard. Only one out of hundreds or thousands of humans had the potential to become a wizard. Based on this probability, there were only a few people in Northtown City who had the potential to become a wizard. Once the wizard tower was built, the northern town would need many wizards. Wizards recruited from the outside would not be as useful as those he trained himself. The cost of building the Sky Garden was very high. Moreover, he was still missing some key materials. He could only slowly collect them in the future. After putting away the items in the treasure chest, Su Len casually added the 2 free attribute points he obtained from leveling up to Vitality. After his attribute points reached 50, he needed 3 attribute points to increase 1 attribute. He still needed 1 attribute point to increase his strength. Therefore, Su Len planned to increase his other attributes first. After adding the attribute points, Sullen's vitality reached 38 points. Apart from the attribute points, he was left with 5 skill points. After looking at the skills, Su Len spent 4 attribute points to upgrade morale beginner to advanced. The effect was simple and brutal. It directly increased the morale of an army by 30 points and temporarily increased their strength by 10% for 6 hours. With the remaining skill points, Su Len spent 100,000 kinner to purchase the Half Moon Slash skill from the shop. He then learned the skill. Half Moon Slash. Release your energy according to a special technique. Release a crescent-shaped energy slash, dealing great damage to the enemy. Maximum range is 500 meters. Level requirement, 25. Half Moon Slash could be upgraded to 3 Sun Moon Slash and 5 Moon Slash. The effect of this skill was to summon 3 or 5 Half Moon Slashes respectively. If the skill was learned to a certain level, it would be extremely useful on the battlefield. Su Len had just met the requirements to learn the Half Moon Slash. After using up all of his skill points, Su Len only had 1 legendary skill point left. However, he did not have any suitable skills or talents to use. If he wanted to level up forbidding magic, he would need 2 legendary skill points. It was not worth it to level up his other talents. Legendary skill points could only be used once the talent reached a certain level. Some talents were in a state where they could not be leveled up. He could only wait until the next time he killed a legendary powerhouse to upgrade his forbidden magic skill. It was not easy to kill a legendary professional. Su Len had successfully killed him several times on the battlefield. If it was a lone legendary master, even if he could not defeat him, there was still a high chance that he could escape. Legendary spellcasters, for example, could teleport away if the situation was not good, unless they used dimensional anchor or spatial imprisonment in advance. However, most of the time, those legendary masters would not give you the chance to use these at all. After putting away the items, Su Len left the camp alone. There were a lot of weathered rocks in the stony wasteland, but there were very few trees. Su Len found an open area and began to try using the Crescent Moon Slash. The energy in his body revolved according to the technique of the Half Moon Slash. Soon, a crescent-shaped energy slash flashing with lightning appeared in front of him. In the next second, this energy blade flashing with lightning flew forward at an extremely fast speed. Wherever the energy blade passed, everything in front of the crescent-shaped energy blade was cut in half. The energy blade flew for a distance of 500 meters before slowly dissipating. Su Len came to the side of a rock that had been cut in half. The cut in the rock was smooth and neat, like a mirror. Even a weapon with sharpness enchantment could not achieve this kind of power. Next, Sulen tested the half-moon slash. After testing, Sulen had a sufficient understanding of this skill. When releasing the half-moon slash in his best state, Sulen could release it 50 times. The attack power of the half-moon slash was stronger than his normal attacks. However, although the half-moon slash was fast, it could still be dodged. Sulen tried to control the movement of the half-moon slash, but after expending a lot of effort, he could only slightly change the direction. If he wanted to make the half-moon slash move according to his wishes, he would need to upgrade it again. After testing the new skill, Sulen returned to the camp. At this time, the battlefield had been cleaned up. There were not many spoils of war from this battle, but no matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat, and it could not be wasted. Although the North Town's income was high, the expenses were also high. Not to mention other things, just the repair of the mystery mirror would cost at least millions of kinner. After the construction of the Wizard Tower, the restoration of the Mystery Realm, and the third phase of the North Town City project, the treasures that Suluin had obtained from the Grey Dwarf were already running out of money. There was also the Sky Garden that was going to be built next. After all these calculations, Suluin became a pauper again. In addition to these, there were also military expenses, equipment expenses, and so on. In the past, it was not so bad because the barbarians did not need to spend money. Now that there were more soldiers, it was impossible not to pay them. This was a huge expense. As expected, developing a territory was a series of business that lost money. Sulen complained with a face full of sorrow. Not long after Sulen returned to the camp, a drow rushed in and reported, "My lord, we caught some spies." "Spies? Spies from there?" Sulen raised his eyebrows and asked, "Spies from the Kingdom of Florence." "They found the fire here last night and sent someone to check it out today," the drow explained. Sulen thought for a moment and said, "Bring them here." "Yes." Soon, a few human soldiers with swollen faces wearing the red and blue military uniforms of Florence came to the camp. "Which army are you spies from?" Sulen glanced at these people and asked. "We belong to the Silver Lion Legion under Marquis Lancelot." When these guys were caught, they were taught a lesson by the drows. With the training skills of the drows, they were very obedient now. Marquis Lancelot. Sulen nodded. He had heard of Marquis Lancelot. This Marquis was not a feudal noble. He belonged to the palace noble and could be said to be one of the most trusted people of King Henry. After a series of inquiries, Surin also figured out the current situation of the human army. After Marquis Winter's death, Lancelot took control of the army as the vice-marshal of the army and continued to fight the orcs. However, after the bloody battle outside of Cult City, the army suffered heavy casualties. Now, they were in a state where they were afraid of the orcs and the orcs. Therefore, the human army did not press on, and the northern nobles wanted to drive the orcs out as soon as possible. However, not long ago, they were taught a lesson by the orcs and suffered heavy losses, so they could only rely on Marquis Lancelot. Sulen thought for a moment and let these spies go. Then, he asked them to pass on a message to the nobles of the Kingdom of Florence. After all, he had helped them so much. These people should at least express their gratitude. After sending a soldier to follow these people to the human camp, Sulen was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he let the army continue to rest. After receiving Sulen's invitation, Lancelot still had some doubts, especially when he heard that Sulen had killed the orc chief. Fortunately, Sulen asked someone to bring the giant axe used by the orc chief. Only then did these nobles believe that Rogthus was dead. After all, for a legendary figure, a weapon was something that they valued as much as their life. After hearing Sulen's invitation, these nobles hesitated for a while before agreeing. However, they requested to bring an army. Sulen had expected this, so he agreed immediately. At noon the next day, these nobles were escorted by more than 300 knights and servants to the agreed place. Sulen had already set up a simple tent there and left a few soldiers to serve as attendants. "Nice to meet you, Lord Sulen." Lancelot greeted Sulen. Lancelot was a conferred knight. He was powerful and handsome, and it was said that he was very popular among the noblewomen in the imperial capital. After meeting him, Lancelot was a handsome man in his 30s. However, he was still a level lower than Sulen. "Nice to meet you, Marquis Lancelot." Sulen waved at him. "Lord Sulen, I've heard a lot of your name during this period of time." Lancelot got down from his horse and walked over quickly, giving Sulen a warm hug. Is that so?" Sulen's expression was a little stiff, but he was doubtful. Could this guy be gay? To think that he's so warm on our first meeting. Should I keep my distance from him? Of course. Some of the nobles who escaped to Cult City told us about how you attacked the Beastmen's logistics. I heard that you defeated an army of 20,000 beastmen with very few casualties. Back then, many people didn't believe it. Now that you've killed the Beastmen's chief, Rogthus, I think no one will doubt it anymore. Lancelot's handsome face had an exaggerated expression as he kept on praising Sulen, not stingy with his compliments. Even Sulen blushed a little when he heard this. However, he did not feel embarrassed at all. If it were someone else, the first impression he gave off would be that he was a bootlicker. However, when it came from Marquis Lancelot, there was no such feeling at all. As expected, those who could make a name for themselves in the imperial capital were not simple people. Sulen understood Marquis Lancelot's background. To be honest, this Marquis did not come from a good background. As an illegitimate son, he could not inherit the family name. However, he now had a title that far surpassed his father's. Although this title did not have any land and only a few manors, it was still very shocking. This is all luck. Moreover, Marquis Winter also contributed to killing Rogthus. If it wasn't for Marquis Winter, I wouldn't have had the chance to kill this Beastman's chief, Sulen said politely. This isn't luck. Even if it's an injured legend, it's still a legend. Lancelot smiled at Sulen. As a conferred knight, he knew how powerful a legend was. Oh right, I reckon that you'll become the subject of songs by wandering poets soon. Lancelot winked and smiled. Chapter 275. Think about it. Nobles who establish their own territories, then defeat the orcs and kill the orc chieftain. Many knight novels are based on this, but they are all fake. Yours is the real deal. I think it won't be long before many knights come to you. Sulen was not interested in this. As for the knights who came to him, most of them were either powerful or the second son of a small noble family. Basically, they all wanted a piece of land. He had no intention of accepting these knights. After all, the knights in Northern City were not ranked. Give them a piece of land? Sulen would be an idiot if he did that. All right, let's not talk about this. Come in and eat, Sulen said with a wave of his hand. I'm also very interested in the food in Northern City. Sulen led Lancelot and the other nobles into the tent. The food was already prepared. Although they were in a military camp, the food prepared by Sulen was quite good. The cooking skills of the military camp chefs were also trained by the halfling Frodo. Although they were not as good as the halfling, they were much better than most human chefs. Sulen also prepared a barbecue. He hunted a gazelle in the wilderness and marinated its tender parts with spices. When it was time to eat, he directly barbecued it. Soon, the aroma of the meat filled the tent. Finally, when the barbecue was served by the chefs, some green vegetables were placed on a silver plate as accompaniment. On the silver plate, the red meat was wrapped in a layer of sauce. The edges were slightly burnt, but the meat inside was fresh and tender. There was also a layer of cumin sprinkled on top. With a gentle bite, the sauce from the barbecue filled one's mouth. It was slightly hot, but it tasted great. It's delicious. The chefs here are as good as His Majesty's. Also, what spices did you sprinkle on it? Lancelot's eyes lit up as soon as he took a bite. He immediately discovered the key. Cumin was a spice that was naturally very compatible with barbecue. This is cumin, a spice that can only be found in the northern wasteland. It's very rare, Sulen said with a smile. It's delicious. This spice is amazing. The other nobles exclaimed in admiration. Several nobles grimaced in pain from the heat, but their swallowing speed did not slow down at all. I'm going to sell this spice to the public. If you like it, you can buy it in the northern town. I'll give you a 20% discount, Sulen said with a smile. I'll ask the servants to buy some from the northern town, Lancelot said. After lunch, everyone finally got down to business. To put it bluntly, it was about the distribution of merits. Sulen did not intend to take these merits. He did not intend to become a part of the Kingdom of Florence, so these merits were prepared to be used in exchange for benefits. After a series of exchanges, Sulen gained a lot of benefits from these nobles, and the nobles also divided up Sulen's contributions. Both sides were very satisfied. After the discussion, the nobles from the northern provinces left one after another. However, Lancelot didn't intend to get up. Seeing this, Sulen waved his hand and signaled his servants to leave. Marquis Lancelot, is there anything else? Sulen tilted his body to make himself more comfortable in the chair. Lancelot finished the rum in his hand and put down the glass. Sir Sulen, you don't want to join the Kingdom of Florence, right? Why do you say that? Sulen raised his eyebrows. You gave all the merits to those nobles. It's obvious that you don't care about the reward from His Majesty, Lancelot said with a shrug. So what? Sulen said lazily. With the strength of the northern town, the Kingdom of Florence will agree to it, Lancelot said without any hesitation. But I have a better way. What way? Sulen asked. He didn't want to make the relationship with the Kingdom of Florence too tense. You should know that we suffered a great loss in this orc invasion. Even Marquis Winter died in battle. This is a huge blow to the Kingdom of Florence. The death of a legendary powerhouse is indeed a serious matter, but the surrounding countries aren't having it easy either. Sulen nodded. The surrounding countries were also troubled by the orcs' invasion. This time, the orcs didn't just invade Florence. The surrounding countries were involved, and the situation was even worse. It's not a foreign matter, but a domestic matter. Lancelot shook his head. Let me explain it to you. Seeing that Sulen was a little confused, Lancelot picked up the glass and poured some wine. He shook it and said, You should also know that there have always been a few factions in the Kingdom of Florence. I don't know much about this. Sulen shrugged. After all, he wasn't in a high position in the Kingdom of Florence, so he didn't have access to the news of the highest level. In addition, he was busy expanding his territory after coming to the northern wilderness. His information channel couldn't be compared to the old nobles at all. Most of the time, he learned from the news brought by the caravans. The news brought by the caravans was at least 2 to 3 months ago, or even half a year ago. Okay, I'll just say it. Lancelot smiled awkwardly. You should know that the Florentine royal family wasn't the Henry family in the beginning, right? Sulen nodded. The earliest royal family of the Kingdom of Florence was the Roman royal family. Then it became the Nord royal family, and finally the current Henry family. Could be said that it had changed 3 times. These families were basically inextricably linked by blood, which was one of the reasons why Florence had so many heirs. There were originally 2 legendary powerhouses who were loyal to the royal family. One was Marquis Winter, and the other was Marquis Brooke. The Kingdom of Florence had 5 legendary powerhouses, and the other 3 were loyal to the other 3 Marquis families. Originally, this was nothing. The royal family with 2 legendary powerhouses had an advantage against any Marquis family. Besides, the 3 Marquis families were also very filthy. This allowed the royal family to hold the power of the kingdom, but now the death of Marquis Winter has broken this balance. The royal family and the other 3 Marquis families are back to the same starting line. What do you think the consequences will be? Lancelot said helplessly. Although he was also a Marquis, he didn't have a corresponding territory. Besides, as a trusted aide of King Hunter, once the Hunter family was replaced by another Marquis, he could only retire to the countryside. The throne is rotated. Is my turn this year? Sulen understood. You can say that. Of course, the royal family of the Kingdom of Florence wouldn't be wiped out. Otherwise, the Roman royal family and the Nord royal family would have been long gone, and there wouldn't be 3 Marquis families now. The nobles of Florence were used to this kind of thing. Then why are you looking for me? You want me to be loyal to the royal family? Sulen frowned. I also want to, but will you agree? Of course not. That's why we came up with another plan, Lancelot said. What's the plan? Su Luin was interested. The Henry royal family will form a political alliance with Northern City. Northern City will support the Henry family as the royal family, and the Henry family will recognize your position. At the same time, they won't restrict caravans from trading in Northern City, Lancelot said seriously. Political alliance? If the other marquis families make a move, will I have to start a war with them? Sulen asked. How is that possible? Lancelot rolled his eyes. The royal family of the Kingdom of Florence won't start a war. It's more of a political reason. After all, the royal family still has a legendary figure. If they really start a war, Florence will be finished. The surrounding countries won't miss such a good opportunity. You just need to declare your support for the Henry royal family. There won't be a war. I see. Then I can consider it. Su Len didn't say anything definite. Okay, but please give us an answer as soon as possible, Lancelot said. By the way, Mr. Su Len, you're not married yet, right? Lancelot suddenly thought of something and asked. Su Len shook his head. No. That's great, Lancelot said excitedly. Princess Sophia of the royal family just came of age this year. She's very beautiful and has a noble status. If you agree, I can talk to King Henry and let Princess Sophia marry you. Su Len couldn't help but roll his eyes. He was directly trying to pimp out Lancelot. No. Su Len was still very wary of political means like a marriage alliance. Don't be in a hurry to reject. Why don't you two meet first? Lancelot continued. Su Len didn't agree. In the end, the marriage alliance was put on hold. However, judging from Lancelot's expression, he didn't seem to have given up. After the two finished their discussion, they left separately. They had only reached an agreement about the political alliance. Since Henry's royal family wanted to borrow Sulen's power, Su Len naturally wouldn't let it go. He wouldn't agree without enough benefits. After Lancelot and Sulen's discussion, Lancelot returned to the barracks and immediately took out a fist-sized crystal ball. This crystal ball was an expensive sound transmission tool. Using this crystal ball, one could directly contact the capital. Now, he was discussing with the royal family about Su Len. After all, although Lancelot was the king's favorite, many of his conditions had to be agreed by the king. A crystal ball was worth about 10,000 kinner, and it could only be used for a limited number of times. Only these big nobles had the money to use it. After staying here for 2 days, Su Len and Lancelot finally discussed various things. Su Len also agreed to form a political alliance with Henry's royal family. Of course, they had to pay a lot. For example, they had to pay taxes. The caravans of North Town City would be treated the same as them when trading in Florence. For example, the Kingdom of Florence couldn't stop North Town City from recruiting refugees in the kingdom. After the two sides finished their discussion, they still needed to sign a formal agreement. The agreement needed the king to sign and stamp it. It would take some time. Su Len didn't continue to wait here. He led his army back to North Town City. P.S. The last chapter updated the main character's latest attributes. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.